go find the customers. I mean, this you probably hear this one, but go find the customers and talk to them and never stop talking to them. And just ask questions about their pain points. The one thing, if you're getting a business off the ground, and this is where I talked about like that incubator idea of being the technical founders, because everybody goes down this. Well, I need an app and I need to build this. The thing that will make you successful or not is going to be, do you understand these customers' pain points? Can you find more of them, and can you sell them the solution? So even if you are technical and you could build the greatest app on earth, can you find people that have that problem are willing to pay you money, part with their hard-earned dollars to solve that problem?
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Danny Gold. And Danny started out earlier in life in computers, and went when computers just were coming into the home, and then went into college for computer engineering and science. Out of college, started a low-level job, and then moved up in the company and became more directly involved with the customers and product management. And then joined a startup in 2008 with a media entertainment company. For a while there, was working for B2B businesses, worked for a number of startups in Colorado for some years, and then jumped over into the cannabis industry, which is what he's doing now, and is doing a training service for cannabis industry workers. So with that much as introduction, and hopefully mostly accurate, welcome on the podcast, Danny.
Absolutely. I've got to have you write my LinkedIn job history here. That was good, Devin. You nailed it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad I could nail it. So, I just took a much longer journey and condensed into a 30 or 45-second version of it. So let's unpack that a bit and tell us how your journey got started when computers were just a new thing entering into the home.
Yeah, I think I guess I don't quite claim it, but I guess statistically I'm on the edge of that elder geriatric millennial, whatever titles we want to put in there. But I always felt like I straddled kind of the older generation as well. I had an older sister, and my father was working in education. Both my parents were teachers and educators. And my father started to move into educational technology, so he was always bringing home whatever the latest and greatest, from an Apple II to the Amiga. When we got an Amiga at home, that was a big deal, and it was a big deal in education. So I was exposed to computers, I think, earlier than my age would have even allowed for, just because my dad had access to it. So I was always tinkering. He taught me to work a soldering iron. He was big into ham radio and building electronic kits from scratch. So I was very much a computer and technology, even leaning onto the hardware side, nerd from a young age. Was just exposed to it. And when I went to college, I got kind of the easier path of not really, stressing over what I wanted to do. I was good with computers and I was good with electronics. So I thought I'd go into, electrical engineering, computer science, and try to work both sides of it. Quickly found that the electronic side, the hardware side, is a better hobby for like switching pickups in a guitar. I can do that all day long. I can fix things. Electronics don't scare me, so I'm glad I have that. But it wasn't the career path for me. The the software, and then later the product and building products and businesses is where I ended up. But I started as low level as you can imagine.
And let's start a little back up there just so we can get that kind of that full picture. So I'm helping me just to fill in the blanks a bit. So college, you went and got computer engineering and science degree. You came out and you said you started out, when we talked a little bit before, in a low level job. So what was that kind of initial low level job that you started to work your way up in?
Yeah, it's one of these funny things where there are really good, perfect jobs out there, and then sometimes they're just not the right fit for the person. So I nailed a really good job, actually during college, that led to a full-time job. The engineering school I went to put a big emphasis on like internships and co-op programs, which fast forward, we try to support even as a small startup. We have an intern that we picked up from a local university here that we've taken through code school and kind of given those opportunities to. And that's something that I love to support because I benefited from it. And I think trade schools and hands-on experience and whatever those opportunities to are sometimes looked over, or they're just not as popular in the United States as there are other places. I don't hear about it as much, but I had that experience, and I think it definitely benefited me. I'm hands-on. I like to do things. So when our engineering school really pushed for people to do these internships and co-op programs before they graduated, they had great connections with local businesses, and they did a good job presenting that this is really your pipeline to landing a good job out of school, right? You can go through, you can get your hands dirty, trying different things. These companies can get to know you, and then hopefully one of them will hire you if you're a mutual fit. So that's how I ended up in my first job. Is I did a co-op program, actually 4 different semesters. I ended up delaying my college graduation by a full year to go back and work more. I just wanted to work. I'm not good at school. I support educational technology a lot, and I've worked in it. But I'm not a good kind of like school book learner in there. Like, give me the thing, let me solve the problem and get hands on with it. So I loved all the practical experience, went through that, and then worked at a large B2B telecom company that made kind of central office routers and switches. They had walls and walls of pads. It's still a great company. It's a publicly traded company. Great company to work at. Really, great benefits. Everything was great. There's literally nothing negative you can say about that experience, except for all the ways that I found it wasn't for me. And most of those came to just things moving slow. So for me, on the hardware side of the world, even I think there's been some advancements there. I know there's some cool like hardware tech startups, and there's more focus on it now. But at that time, hardware moved really, really slow. Creating a new physical product just moved slow. I think it was hard to see the reward of your work, right? You might work on something and it might be thrown in the scrap bin and never come to market. Or, you might work something and then 5 years later, you get to see it come to the market. I think this is where you can see I found myself into startups because I was missing that kind of quicker feedback and that satisfaction of creating and seeing people use the creations there. And that was really the only thing that was missing. I got so much great hands-on experience. Like I said, I got to learn that I didn't like the low-level engineering because I was working on software that ran on routers and switches, and it's cool, like backbone of the internet stuff. It's needed. I hope there's a lot of people that love that because we need infrastructure, right? This podcast, this discussion, these Zoom meetings, like all the things that power this, we need people that care deeply about that. It just wasn't for me. The company was great. It was a place where people can work. It's one of these few that are like lifers. Like they're gonna support you. You get a good 401k match. They're gonna give you good benefits. The people that I worked with there had been there for 20, 30 years. There's people I know that still work there, right? And it's been 20 years since I worked there. So there's people that have been there for 40 or 50 years.
So now,
Yeah.
So yeah, and so now diving into that, so you go through all of that, you kind of figure out, hey, this is a great industry, great businesses. It's not for me. Moves at a different pace, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, get that and find it. Whether it's a glass ceiling or hey, I want to do my own thing, or be able to captain my own ship, or hey, I want to be able to try things out or go to different pace. All of those things end up leading towards going towards a startup or a small business. And so I think with that, one of the things you mentioned is around 2008, you started to try out and join a startup that was in more media entertainment. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually, I was pulled down that rabbit hole with some coworkers I had met, at the bigger telecom company. So once again, all great experience there, great network, got to meet people, other people that moved on, and keep those connections. And kind of got pulled into that startup rabbit hole, had the opportunity to move out here to Denver, where I've been since then. And join and become a co-founder of a startup in the media entertainment space. And that kind of started, I think, like a lot of these things, like it was it was part-time. It was kind of dabbling. It was, a little bit of like, is this right for us? Is this right for our family? Didn't have kids at the time, but was married. But we were in a good place. Like we were both employed, and it was a good time to kind of experiment and say, oh, cost of living's low. Like we can run some risk here, right? And let's see what the startup thing is all about. And that ended up becoming a 9.5 year ride through joining the company, through kind of helping steer the company into a direction to create a B2B video platform. And this was really in the early days of movie studios looking to digitize to get ready for video streaming. So we think about how we watch content now in 2022. These companies have been working on this since the early 2000s. They knew this was coming. The technology wasn't quite there, but you imagine, Disney sitting on this vault of master files on tape. And now you have Disney Plus, where you can serve it up and watch anything they've ever created in an instant. It took them almost 20 years to be able to kind of innovate from where they were in putting that on VHS and DVD and then Blu-ray to making that like a one-click offering. So we were very early in that, and were some of the boring B2B plumbing kind of between the content creators and the streaming services, and creating those video databases and moving the files around and moving the data about those titles around. But I was able to kind of work with a few early adopter customers, figure out these needs, and then we created a platform to serve them. And then, over the years went out, raised money, built a team, opened an office here in Denver that we had just north of about 80 employees at kind of the peak of that. So grew that to, a healthy size startup. And then got to see part of that technology and that company, sold off, and some of it kind of carry on and move on in different ways. So that was really the first startup journey where I got, I always say I'm the least educated in my family. Everybody in my family has master's degrees, if not PhDs, including, my grandmother in the 50s. So the fact that I went to school and got a bachelor's degree and then just wanted to work, I was always the least educated. But that 9 year startup run gave me my MBA and all of my business school learnings, I'd like to say, from kind of taking that, launching that, going through, raising money from VCs and kind of seeing that journey through.
No, that definitely makes sense. And so now, if I remember, you kind of went through and you mentioned that you did that media entertainment startup. You also worked in Colorado for a few other startups. Now help me kind of, or make, and it's always still different. It's different from one step from working from a larger, more established or a non-startup type of a business to going to startups, but yet it's another thing to do your own startup or to make the leap to do something for yourself, because you get to figure out, hey, there's hiring and firing, there's marketing and sales, you have to be the janitor, you have to be the boss, you have to figure out accounting and everything else, which is still different than working for a startup where they still are to a large degree are managing that, and you don't have to focus on that or worry about it. So now, as you decided, after a period of time working for other startups, you wanted to kind of get into the cannabis industry, do that yourself. First of all, what triggered the decision to make that leap, and then kind of how has it gone since you made the leap?
Yeah, it's a good point. I will say, here I still learn the things that I don't know every day, because something comes up, and then if it's your company, you're like, oh, I guess that's on me. I better go figure that out, right? Whether it's from anything from like D&O insurance that comes in through a contract, or something negotiating investor, like, oh, I better go learn this. This one hadn't come up before. So still on that journey very much. And one thing on the previous startup in the media entertainment days, I was a co-founder and was in the CTO role there. Was exposed to everything, right? And at the time, you would say, "Oh, I know everything about the ins and outs of a startup over there," but you still kind of specialize, right? I was still very focused on the technology side and the product side. And while I was out there fundraising with our CEO, sales wasn't really my responsibility. I was on plenty of sales calls over there, and the other things, some of the financial forecasting and those things. I saw it all. I contributed parts of it, but it wasn't squarely on my shoulders. So that definitely evolves from even a co-founder role, depending on where you specialize, to kind of being more in the CEO, founder role there, and taking on all of those additional responsibilities. And then hopefully, finding ways to delegate those and finding good partners to help you through it, which is always my strategy because there's a lot of things I don't want to be the expert on and don't want to hold on to and would rather hand off as soon as I can. So here in Denver, kind of between that startup and Zoltrain here in the cannabis tech world, I worked with what is now my co-founder on the Zoltrain side, who was employee number 9 at that previous startup. So we've got a good, I don't know, 12 years under our belt working together. In between there, we were doing what I think now would be called a startup studio. That wasn't a term that I heard thrown out there. It was somewhere what we would just considered like a newer style startup incubator. And basically, we were the technical co-founders pairing up with founders with interesting ideas, just so they didn't get fleeced trying to outsource their app or their idea, or the thing that we just see over and over again. If you don't have a technical co-founder, if you're not technical, you just jump right into, mortgaging your house and shoveling all that money to a dev team and just building a thing and hoping that it turns into a business, right? And that's upside down in a number of different ways. And I've just seen it over and over again. I've seen people spend their personal, whatever their personal savings is trying to get that done. And there's so many other things that you need to do when you're launching that. And we were working with a number of startups where we were kind of plugging as their product team. We were building some of it, or we were kind of consulting a dev team to put that together. Sorry, glass of water break time.
So no, and with that, as you're taking the glass of water break time, or now as kind of we've gone through that, and I think that's definitely insightful and helpful, especially for those that are trying to figure out how you are doing a lot of that development, and especially if you don't have that area of expertise or that background, it is a difficult area. But now with that in mind, kind of catch us up. So, when did the current startup with the cannabis business industry start, and kind of where's it at now today?
Yeah, so this idea of kind of training workers and then eventually training consumers on products in cannabis, which there's a lot of education that needs to happen in an industry that literally didn't exist, much more than a decade ago, and is kind of coming into new markets every day, where people are going to be purchasing legal cannabis for the first time in their lives. That idea actually came and got connected while we were working on that kind of startup studio incubator. So we got connected with a local dispensary owner, and through just kind of network in Colorado and people we had worked with before, she was kind of in the zone of saw the need, personally felt the need. She opened one of the first dispensaries in Colorado, was foundational in kind of getting some of the laws passed, and then just saw how much training was required from the workers that were having to be hired and trained on the products, and how fast the industry was changing, to make sure there was a good customer experience and make sure that consumers had the best possible experience, coming into a dispensary, getting connected with products. And it really just came down to those educated purchase decisions. And that was something that resonated with me of the things we had worked on and looked at and kind of been brought in front of us. That idea, just looking at the market, obviously living in Colorado since medicinal marijuana was passed here, and kind of seeing that growth and then seeing the switch over to adult use, was definitely aware of how big a business it was. And then kind of quickly got schooled on how few solutions were available, because the traditional service providers, tech platforms, for a variety of reasons, couldn't transact in cannabis. They literally couldn't take the money of a cannabis company and deposit it in their bank account. So they weren't serving this industry. So greatly underserved, much more underserved than most. I was hearing from owners and operators in the space the challenges, everything's done in pen and paper, and just they don't have the tools available to them, and it was a mixture of, not aware of what tools are out there, not literally not being able to buy some of the tools, and then just needing some new tools and some new strategies to be created, because it is a different market that's moving at a different pace with some unique challenges in there. So was actually connected with the idea from the startup incubator, and then kind of pulled down the rabbit hole with my business partner and co-founder to, hey, this should be the thing that we build, focus on. We spent about a year just kind of our own, both kind of sweat equity, and paying our own bills there to kind of get the idea off the ground. and then took it and ran with it to go raise money and build it into a real business and keep with it. So it was kind of a great idea that was presented to us. I can't take credit for finding the problem in there. The problem was brought to us, and then we thought it was a worthy one of being solved, and that we kind of had the right talents and experience to bring to it.
No, it definitely makes sense, and that works. And it sounds like it's been a fun journey. So now as we're kind of caught up to the present day of where you're at in your journey, always a great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, this is a good one. I feel like I still collect them, right? So if we do the follow up episode, I'll have hopefully new and interesting ones for you there. But I think for me, I love to invent. I love to create. And the thing for me sometimes is overcomplicating and trying to create new and present something like net new to a market. So I'll take the media and entertainment startup example here. We had a platform that was very new. It was doing things in different, new, and exciting ways because we were prepping for video streaming, and this is a new endeavor. There were a lot of established solutions in our space that were under the term digital asset management. Those that existed, they'd mainly managed like photo files. Like I thought they were legacy and old and boring. So I did everything I could to separate ourselves from that existing market. We're not a digital asset management system. We're not this. And I spent a lot of time telling the market what we weren't. And what I've learned over time, and I'm trying to be present with this now, because these opportunities always come up, of not trying to define a new market. When you're a startup, you need to explain things in a way that people understand, that resonates with a problem that they have now, and it's probably a solution that they're hunting for. Even if your solution is new and different and the next evolution, all these things are true, but you won't get the opportunity to kind of take that customer on that journey unless you meet them right then and you explain the problem. And as much as we all hate it, this is why the Uber for X, or the Facebook and Twitter for Y analogies that people love to hear love to say when they're pitching investors, and we all kind of cringe at, like, oh, we don't need another like Uber for delivering my coffee downstairs in the morning or whatever it is. The reason that works is it anchors you, and you immediately know what it is, and then you can build on it. You can say why. Well, it's not just that, we do these things as well.
Sure. No,
but
I think no. Go ahead.
I was saying, I think I spent a lot of time, years in the early stage of that last company, trying to tell everybody what we weren't. And we would have been more successful much earlier on if we just said, this is what we are for video, and now come see how we've kind of taken that into the future.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. And I think there is an element with the startup and small business, not only of having a great product or great technology, but able to, one, make sure the timing is right, and two, be able to convey that message. So I think that's definitely an understandable mistake, but a great one to learn from. Second question I always ask now is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Go find the customers. I mean, this you probably hear this one, but go find the customers and talk to them, and never stop talking to them. And just ask questions about their pain points. The one thing, if you're getting a business off the ground, and this is where I talked about like that incubator idea of being the technical founders, because everybody goes down this. Well, I need an app and I need to build this. The thing that will make you successful or not is going to be, do you understand these customers' pain points? Can you find more of them, and can you sell them the solution? So even if you are technical and you could build the greatest app on earth, can you find people that have that problem, are willing to pay you money, part with their hard-earned dollars, to solve that problem? So you just have to find them.
No, and I think that, that's sometimes the problem is, you always have the old field of dreams. If I build it, they will come. And people kind of then talk themselves into, well, if I just have a really great product, then the customers will find me. And if they don't know about your product, if they can't find it, doesn't matter how awesome it is, they're not going to be able to find you, and they're not going to purchase it from you. So I do think going out, finding the customers, or identifying who they are, and making sure that they know about your product is always an important step for any business. So, well, with that, now if people want to reach out to you, if they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, or find out more?
And I welcome all of it. I'm super active on LinkedIn. If you look me up, Danny Gold, and our company Zoltrain on LinkedIn, easy way to find me. If you want to email me, Danny@Zoltrain.com, pretty easy email address to figure out or find. And I welcome all those conversations and all those connections.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out on LinkedIn. That's one of my, or probably my only real social media platform that I like. And so with that, it's definitely a great place to connect. And so, well, now as we wrap up the podcast, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast and share it, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Danny, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome. Appreciate you. Thank you so much, Devin.